Hey, I'm back. It's John Hope Bryant, founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Operation Hope, America's first nonprofit financial services network for the poor, the struggling class, the teetering class, folks with too much month at the end of their money. One thing I know is whether you're white, black, red, brown, or yellow, you want to see some more green. I want to thank you as we wrap up 2016 for 18 million viewers strong of this Straight Talk Civil Rights series that's unbought, unbiased, and nonpartisan, coming to you straight and no chaser with solutions in your life. I see you all signing on. Hello. I see you. I see your names. But I want to get directly to this topic, as I know that some of you are on your lunch break, and I want to make sure that I hit the substance of it. I do see you all signing on. I will acknowledge you at the end of this video, and hey, Byron and others, and I will give personal comments when I finish here. I've got Ray Penny in my office who came to visit with me, African-American man, a father of several children, and when the elections happened, he said if certain things transpired, he was moving to his cabin. What Ray didn't realize in his frustration, in his genuine authenticity for America truly to live its potential, was his child is actually the idealist and listened to everything he said and meant what he was saying. So when things turned out a way different than he had thought, he came home from a long day at work, and his son said, "When are we packing?" His son said, Jonathan said, "When are we packing?" It was at that time, and I'm not putting words in Ray's mouth or his son's, but at that time Ray realized this is not a game, that you couldn't just step off the field of life, that your children are paying attention to everything that you say, and they're taking you seriously. And if you're going to say something, you got to back it up. And so he decided not to step off the field and retreat, but to step on the field and double down, to figure out what we have in common and to try to figure out how we move forward, rainbows after storms. So I want to acknowledge Ray. Ray, did I say that story accurately? I want to acknowledge Ray and his family. It was really the best of America. I want to acknowledge Jamie here, who's my producer for this series. Okay, let me get into this thing. I'm going to explain the U.S. elections to you. Now that the Electoral College is in, that's all sorted out. One thing we can acknowledge about America is that we are still one of the greatest nations on the planet. We've had a peaceful transfer of power in the midst of the greatest disagreement about who we are and whose we are and where we're going since the Civil War. No doubt about it, people are in different camps, but even with that, we found a way to move forward. The two problems I have is that we lost our civility. Some of our leaders have lost their civility, and it's about me and not about we. But that's separate from the topic. We have got to now make America win, and we got to get behind the wheel, get back on the field, and get in your community, start a nonprofit, join a nonprofit board. Don't give up, don't give in. Find something you can believe in, find a nonprofit or a group you believe in, and get to work rebuilding your community. If you can't control your country, you can control your home and your street and your block, which then builds and rebuilds your country. But now you like that. Okay, thank you. Let me now get to the heart of the matter. I'm going to blend two stories that affected me. One, a conversation I had, and one, a conversation that was shared with me of Southern gentlemen who had a conversation with me about this election. And here's essentially what they said. And I'm going to use their vernacular, and not to parody them. In fact, I love the way they talk. This is an intelligent, successful Southern gentleman, successful in his business. And I'm just going to talk in the vernacular he talks so that you get, and I can take you into the story. But please, I don't want anybody thinking that I'm parodying anybody. I say this with the greatest respect. Here's what they said. Well, John, I like you. You're a good man. You're doing good work in the world, and I think we have a lot in common. You know, you and me, we agree on many things. But y'all, you know, confuse this election. I know you know the Clintons, and I know they're your friends, and I think the Clintons are nice people. I think that they're decent people. They mean well. Maybe not the person I'd vote for, but I think they mean well. But y'all confused and complicated this here election. Let me explain this to you. I said, yes. He said, well, you know, John, I had a raccoon in my attic. And I love animals, and I love human rights, you know, and I love animal rights, and I'm a God-fearing man. But I want this raccoon out my attic. So, you know, I called the Humane Society, you know, and I told them about my problem, and they told me about their website, and they sent me to their website, and they sent me to a nice brochure, and they sent me some brochures, and it was very educational, John. But they didn't get the raccoon out my attic. So a couple weeks later, I called, you know, the pet department in my city, and I asked the pet department to help me get the raccoon out my attic. For those of you who don't know this story going, just hold on. I asked the pet department to get the raccoon out my attic, and you know, the pet department cited some policies and some procedures to me, and all seemed very appropriate, you know. And they told me what I could do and couldn't do, and then they sent somebody out, you know, John. But they didn't get the raccoon out my attic either. And a couple weeks later, you know, I saw the mayor in my city, and I've supported the mayor. I gave the mayor some money. I voted for him. And I told the mayor about my problems, you know. And the mayor gave me an eloquent speech, John. It was very eloquent. It was beautiful, beautiful speech. But the mayor didn't get the raccoon out my attic either. And a couple weeks later, a guy came by my house, John. I didn't know him, you know. He's not really my kind of guy. Sort of slick. Talks in ways I don't really relate, you know. And I don't know if I really trusted him completely or even at all. I don't know if I would leave him alone with my daughter, you know. But he had a big gun. And he swore to me, John, he was going to get the raccoon out my attic. So I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I just told him to go ahead. So I said, well, what happened with the story? Did he get the raccoon out your attic? He said, no, John, I'm not quite sure, but he was up there shooting. Boom. That's the election. The guy was up there shooting. And that's what folks wanted. They wanted somebody up there shooting, whether they hit something or not. And he said, John, you've complicated this. It's not, you talking about people's morality and their values and whether they respect women, which is important, and whether they are this person, that, whether they are racist. And, you know, I hope that they're not a racist and so on and so forth. But you're really focusing on the wrong thing. It was really one thing going on in this election, maybe three things for different people, but really just only one thing. That was the raccoon in the attic. The one thing going on in the election was cratering jobs and economic fear. And I'm going to get back to that in a minute. He said, now there may be three things for going on for 100 million people who made this vote, 55 million who voted in one direction. You know, maybe it was the fact that, people are hurting. I'm going to do this in order, just so you make sure you get this. Creating jobs and economic fear. That's the big one thing. So you have 28 million poor whites in this country, probably more than that, who've been left behind after the Industrial Revolution, who were in the agricultural age, made a lot of money, made a good living with their hands. But when we moved from agricultural age to cities, from rural areas to cities, we didn't bring them with us, and we didn't go back and revitalize those economies. They don't have a spokesman. They're frustrated, depressed, pissed off, and upset, but they don't scream and holler. They just sit with it in their gut. By the way, number one group of Americans dying today, high school educated white men. I think it's depression. Back to the story. But that group wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. And that's where I got it wrong. That wasn't enough to tip the election. In 2009, there was a Great Depression, a Great Recession here. And somebody making $90,000 a year, so a college-educated, middle-class white in this example, making $90,000 a year, gets laid off in 2009. Doesn't get a new job until 2012, but this job doesn't make $90,000 a year like they made. It makes $50,000 a year. So the national statistics show that that person is now employed, but they are highly underemployed. Did you get that? They're underemployed. They're making almost less than they made before. So that means they're stressed out, pissed off, frustrated. They're arguing with their mate about money. They can't send their kids to college. They don't know whether their kid's going to do as good as they are. They are worn out, stressed out, and they are on the edge. But they are employed, and they're wearing a suit, and they're going to work, but they are on the edge. They're just at that tipping point. They're waiting for somebody to speak to them, and they don't have a spokesman too. And then you had a whole group of people who, white, black, red, brown, and yellow, who fit, you see what I'm saying, who fit that profile, who were making $100,000, now making $60,000, making $90,000, now making $50,000, making $70,000, now making $40,000, who had a professional job in an office, now working at Walmart. That group together got really frustrated. And then somebody walked in. And that's cratering jobs and economic fear, which then makes everything else worse. And now versus focusing on values and morals and ethics and things, they're now focusing on their pocket as their priority and their station in life, and now the other things come into play. So now you have, in the middle of all this crisis, you have the president, very honorable man. I think Obama has done a great job, by the way, overall. I would have had a different priority on jobs versus some other things early on, but I think, you know, he's a good man. He's a decent and good man. But he decided to sign an executive order for transgender restrooms. And, you know, I'm not going to get into the debate whether that's right or wrong. I'm saying in the midst of somebody's absolute pain, they're trying to figure out how their life is going to not fall apart and crater. They look at the TV and they see a full day of discussion around transgender restrooms, not what's going on to solve the critical problems of their life. And then they see, somebody's going to get upset when I say this. I keep saying Black Lives Matter, great mission, wrong strategy, no strategy, because anger is not a strategy. Civil rights movement, your adversary had to win. In the civil rights movement, you talk without being offensive, listen without being defensive, and always leave even your adversary with their dignity. Because if you don't, they'll spend the rest of their life trying to make you miserable. If you're a minority group, you cannot win through guns and bullet and battering and beating people up. And you don't have wars and tanks. You got to have high moral authority. You got to step over mess and not in it. Hold on, you guys. Just point it to me. We're not going to give up on you. I got you. The technology went crazy. I'm not going to give up on you. So it was over mess, not in it. That's what our strategy should have been. That's not what our strategy was. And so now you got certain people, not the whole movement, certain people in, let's say, Black Lives Matter or whatever else we were upset about, saying all white people are the devil, saying all police are the devil. Okay, if you're sitting around in your house and you're watching the transgender jobs debate, you're watching this other thing where you're on the freeway trying to get home from your job, you worked your tail off, it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and the freeway shut down because some people decided to protest against people who had nothing to do with the crisis that they are dealing with in their community. Somebody shut down their freeway and you're just trying to get home. You add all that up and people watching TV and saying, this is not, I don't even recognize this country anymore. What's going on here? And nobody's speaking to me. Boom, and then a spokesman shows up. Not a spokesman of hope, not a spokesman of solutions, but somebody who is speaking to your fears. Now, those fears are legitimate. Those fears are real. And I said this in a video, Healing America, which I did right after the election. You should go back and watch that. Black and brown advocates made the wrong move. We're serving rural America and urban America at Operation Hope, but we did it too late. When I have a white sister who grew up and thought she was going to have some wonderful career in her life, and she ends up after 20 years, not the 6 months at Walmart, she thought she'd be working there. I'm picking on Walmart, but it could be any place. Let's say it's Burger King, okay? She didn't end up working there 6 months or a year. She ended up working there 20 years. You don't think that white female at 65 years old at retirement is distressed and stressed about her life? You don't think that she wants somebody to advocate for her too? But she didn't have an advocate. She didn't have a voice. She didn't have minority groups saying, I'm pitching for you too. And that's why I keep saying this issue is not black, white, red, brown, or yellow. It's about having some more green. This is a movement in the suites and more than it is the streets. This is about class and poverty as much as about, or more about race and the color line. You remember it was the agitation of economics that in every era of human dissension and human degradation that preceded the racial divide. The racial divide didn't come first. The economic crushing came first, and then the racial divide emerged and popped. And what we can't do is to light a fire to this. We cannot put emoliation on this. We cannot put kerosene on this. We cannot fuel the fuse that is already next to the fire waiting for somebody to light it. You got to decide whether you want to curse the darkness or light a candle. You got to decide whether you're about what you're for or about what you're against. You got to decide about whether you're about light or you're about darkness. You got to decide about whether the glass is half full or it's half empty. It's the same glass. You got to decide about whether you're blessed or whether you're stressed. You got to decide about whether this is a good country or it's a crappy country, and you want to get out and go someplace else. And I guarantee you, by the way, wherever you go, it's not going to be perfect either. You got to decide whether you're going to double down and make this country the best country it can be, because she's not a country. America is an idea. And we can make her anything we want. What are we going to make her? You know, the Southern gentlemen who told me those stories, I merged those stories together, about the raccoon, that's just brilliant. It's dead on right. Now, was there race issues here? Was there foreign intervention here? Was there mistakes made by certain federal law enforcement authorities? You know, probably so. I think with foreign intervention, absolutely so. Would the election have been different? I don't know. But what I do know is that there are 100 million very pissed off people who up until now didn't think they had a voice. And we did not run to their aid to be their voice, to be their salvation, to be there, to say, we're not going to build walls, we're going to build bridges, and we're going to live in harmony together because your problems are the same as my problems. Let me tell you something. You can take no pleasure in the fact that there's a hole in my end of our boat. You can take no pleasure from the fact that there's a hole in my end of our boat. Am I going to work with the administration? If the administration is trying to help poor people, if the administration is trying to help middle-class people, if the administration is trying to level the playing field, if the administration is trying to bridge some of this dissension and create jobs and economic opportunity and provide literacy for young people, and if the administration is going to do those things, I will help the administration do those things, and I will salute the times that they do those things. I'm not about a person, I'm about an institution, I'm about America. This too shall pass. And anybody who can do good, we need to help them be good, because we need to light a candle and not curse at darkness. Because if certain people fail, we fail. If the nation fails and we root for the nation's failure, we're just rooting for our own failure. You see, fear don't work. It makes you feel good for a minute. Intimidation don't work. Bullies don't work. It makes you feel good for a minute. But karma is real. And whatever goes around comes around. And the universe is a perfect accounting system. You don't need to do anything. Let God do his job and you do yours. I'm going to do mine. So I'm going to work in the Get It Done party, as I've always done. I'm going to go back to Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass and the Freedmen's Bank, a black man and a white man working together, a conservative individual and a progressive individual. I'm going to go from there to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Andrew Young and all the white people who helped the movement and Jewish people who helped that movement in civil rights. And I'm going to go back to the healing of the bonds after the Civil War. I'm going to go back to all the great examples of heroes and sheroes, Mother Teresa, Dr. Dorothy Height, Michael Collins in Ireland, Mandela and my friend Desmond Tutu in South Africa, who when Mandela left prison made his jailer his vice president. Come on now. When you got the power, you don't need to use it. God never gave me anything else he wanted you to have, and God never gave you anything he wanted me to have. Why am I going to argue about that? I know there's somebody who sits on the throne, and there's nobody here on earth. And that's good enough for me. So I'm not giving up my hope. I know rainbows only follow storms. I know you cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. And I know I love you. And I know that all good things happened in bad times. All really good transformational things happened when you were down on your luck and you thought that the bets were off, but faith is what you do when you don't have all the facts. God is good. We are great. And we are still the greatest nation on planet Earth because we have the freedom to make this video. I'm out. Bye.